Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/ask Reddit by Planet Reddit. People of Reddit who knew celebrities before they were famous. How different do they act now? I went to school with Rupert Grint, Ron Weasley from Harry Potter. I was into acting too, so we had done a few school plays together. He was really nice, very chill, a good laugh. I haven't seen him since school days, but he kept coming to classes whenever he wasn't filming, was always happy to chat about the movies. Sometimes he'd need a little break from so many people wanting to talk, and would come and hang out in the library. And honestly, you'd never know he was in the biggest film series at the time. Honestly, I think a lot of these answers boil down to if they want fame or not. Rupert loved what he was doing, but didn't care about being famous and having people kiss his ass. Just a nice normal kid. He used to live in a town not too far from me. Everyone seemed to think he was a recluse and a bit of a moody prick. But I think, like you said, it can be tiring having people come up to you all the time, and he probably reasonably wanted some quiet for himself. A bit of the casting was done not far from where I grew up, the Weasley twins and Draco. My sister's claim to fame was that she once sat at a table in school that Tom Felton, Draco, had scratched his name into. Jack Black is the same person he was as a teenager. Funny, kind, caring, and spreading that joy of music. Fun fact, Jack Black used to put wires up his sleeves when he was a kid in the hopes that other kids would notice them poking out and think he was bionic. I put wires up my sleeve and I wanted the wires just to peek out a little bit so that if any kids noticed my wires I would say, "It's nothing, it's nothing." They would think I was bionic, because my logic was that I was trying to hide my bionics from them. What guy? That's like the next level of when you're 7 with your mom at the grocery store and bored out of your mind, so you pull your arms into your shirt and pretend you're an amputee and hope people will notice. My grandpa, RIP, owned a grocery store in Miami in the late 70s. Wesley Snipes and his friends once stole some candy from his store, and when he caught them he let them have it. Since then Wesley and his friends were regulars. Once, Wesley left his bike in front of the store and it got stolen. Was a pretty bad area. My grandpa gave him his old bike that he kept in the back of the store. My uncle took over in 2001 when my grandpa died. In 2007 he came back to the store while my uncle and cousin were there to ask about my grandpa. My uncle said they talked for a little over an hour about how my grandpa treated him like a son. When he found out my grandpa passed he felt guilty he didn't visit sooner. He embraced my uncle and cousin and left. My uncle said he told him they plan on having the building repainted while they talked. About a week later a crew of painters arrived and told my uncle they were already paid to have the building repainted. Such a genuine dude. Edit. Sorry I haven't been able to reply to everyone. But thank you guys so much for love. Even though he's often portrayed negatively. Glad to see that people still try to find the best in us. Even it's a small gesture. Red heart. This is awesome. You hear so much about how disconnected he is and just smokes a ton, but it's nice to hear he remembers those who helped him in the past. I haven't read up on it in a while, but I think it was Ricky Gervais who pointed this out. If you look into the Wesley Snipes tax scandal, you will find he actually didn't do anything wrong. He was getting robbed by his money manager, and when he went to the authorities to report it, the liability for unpaid taxes still fell on Wesley Snipes. Pretty messed up. The media just reported Snipes goes to prison for tax evasion. Not personally, but everyone in my town has a Dave Chappelle story. I worked with a guy who said he knew him. I called BS. We then met Dave and they were actually friends. Basically no one in town thought he would be much. Now he is a local hero, really down to earth. You literally see this man just chilling in the park in normal cheap clothes. Nothing has changed him. You wouldn't think he was famous. Maybe homeless but not famous. Edit. I should have said wrinkled clothes like he fell asleep then just woke up and left. I didn't see any logos and brands. People seem upset I said cheap clothes. I have no clue as to what he was wearing. Still super nice guy. You wouldn't think he was famous. I love Dave's comedy, but what I love even more is that he seems to be a great guy underneath it all. Like that time a couple was scammed for their tickets, and he came and greeted them and gave them new tickets for free. Also, he doesn't give a shit about what anyone says, like ever, except for when someone is being nice. That's because all of the greats are at their core satirists. So for example, George Carlin material is still relevant and Dane Cook is not. My grandfather taught Jack Nicholson in high school math class. Said he was rebellious but wasn't too bad at math. Maths teachers care more about the numbers than the rebellion. If you look at them just right, rebellion can be found in the numbers. A close family friend was best friends with Tom Cruise before he got famous. I didn't believe her and she showed me pictures they have taken together, like a Vegas road trip, camping, etc. He was really awesome, but as soon as he got an ounce of fame it went to his head and he became very arrogant and a famee. Don't forget a cultist. That came later. I had a friend in high school whose cousin is Kendrick Lamar. He's said Kendrick's pretty much still the same guy, acts the same around friends and family, just with millions of dollars now. Was this the cousin that you killed back in 1994? Akio Truce? Now crawl your head in that noose. My aunt was best friends with Madonna in high school, stayed friends until she got famous and she turned into a completely different person in the worst way possible. Found the BoJack Horseman writer. I could hear Princess Carolyn say this. I can't remember before my aunt was famous. Alex Kingston played River Song in Doctor Who, but I remember going to her wedding and meeting Matt Smith, who played the Doctor in Doctor Who, and him fixing my flip-flop. The best moment of my life ever. You went to a wedding in flip-flops? It's become a common thing over here Ireland and I presume the UK for either guests to bring flip-flops to a wedding for the later hours when their shoes are killing them, or for the newlyweds venue to supply them in the bathroom, usually for the female guests. I've never seen it for the males. For my own wedding we bought like 50 pairs of cheap bargain store flip-flops for the female guests and left them in the bathrooms. Once word got out they were there, they were snapped up. I had a teacher who taught Drake. Apparently he was a nice kid but then got really douchy when he started getting famous. Like, Drake famous or Degrassi famous? Did the douchery starts in his late or early teens? I feel like him getting douchy IRL is why the writers put his character in a wheelchair. This is one of those threads I wish I could tell the serious ones and the trolls apart. I was once best friends with Elvis until he got famous. He still visits me from time to time. Tyler the Creator, exactly the same. We were all concerned at how bizarre he was. He would call people a table or something incredibly random, and the sense of humor caught on in my high school. The fame did nothing. He's still strange and a sweetheart. I can almost hear this on a table in his deep behind voice followed by his goofy laugh. Edit. Spelling is hard. Your girlfriend looked like my mom. My dad was good friends with Will Smith before the Fresh Prince days. Will actually showed him the pilot before it aired. Fast forward however many years to After Earth and Will invited us on the set. His first words when he saw my dad 10 plus years later was "The Philly crew is back. Both Will and Jaden are the sweetest people you'll ever meet." Edit. Thanks for all the love. This is the most upvotes I've ever gotten. Internet fame. Edit 2. My dad also did all of the work on Will Smith's and Jazzy Jeff's cars back in the day. Had a little too much fun in Will's Jeep and flipped it on its roof. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. My client had dinner with Will Smith at a restaurant in Charleston, SC, and said he was a riot. Said they were laughing loudly throughout dinner. An older woman and her guest walked over when she was leaving and said she did not know whether to be pissed off or grab a chair and join them. Then Will turned around and she about died. After dinner Will went out and talked a rickshaw guy into letting him on the bike and he took tourists for a ride, LOL. He seems like an awesome person. Bruno Mars's mom was a bartender at a local karaoke dive bar that I was a regular at. At the time, his biggest hit was The Hook for Billionaire by Travie McCoy. Anyway, she was selling tickets for an upcoming concert he was having and she asked our table if we wanted to buy some. My friend declined and she exclaimed, "Why not? He's my son." I ended up getting a couple of tickets despite not knowing any of Bruno Mars's songs. It turned out to be one of the best concerts I've ever been to. The guy knows how to put on a good live show. The tickets were only $40 each, I think. His opening act was a local group of large Polynesian men singing Motown who went by the name Nesian 9. They were pretty good too. The next time he was in town for a concert, he had blown up and the tickets were going for $400. I would have loved to see him again, but not at that price. His mom was really nice, down to earth. and a pretty good singer herself. R.I.P. Bernie. At least she lived long enough to see her son's success. Went to middle school with Megan Fox for a bit. She rode my bus and she mostly kept to herself. Most of the guys would fight over who was going to sit next to her, but she was very shy and didn't really have much to say. Megan Fox seems like a pretty chill person. I've liked her as an actor/screen presence since I saw the first Bay Transformers film. I thought she easily outshone Shia LaBeouf in that one. Loved her in Jennifer's Body. Painfully underrated actor who doesn't put up with bullshit from powerful men. My mom knew Seal as far back as when he was still trying to be an architect, and she says he was always really nice. They didn't stay in touch. She moved away and they were never close, but she said he went out of his way to foster genuine connections to people before and after his music started to gain traction. He always had star quality. Everyone from the most important person in the room to a janitor walking through would be drawn to him, and he'd engage with everyone in a way that really stuck. She always mentions that he was just a really sincere, deeply felt person. He randomly views my Instagram stories. According to a story in the Knit, he does this a lot. He said me looking at people's stories, answering people or sending them a quick message. It's always coming from a place of love. Yep, he watched one of my stories too. Was pretty delightful. I went to college with Joe Keery aka Steve Harrington in Stranger Things. He was my college boyfriend's sweet mate and just the nicest guy. His hair has always been dreamy and amazing. Last time I saw him was at a viewing of The Hateful Eight after we graduated, and he still made a point to come over and say hi. Edit. Spelling. Obviously we can't know a person's true nature from their screen presence, but I admit that I would have been shocked to hear that Joe Keery was some kind of a. I went to junior high with Norah Jones. She was the most sincere and serene person. She was fun to talk to and she never gave a hint of who her father was. The night she won all those Grammys was very telling that she hadn't changed a bit. I believe this. I've met her twice after her shows and she was super nice and took pictures and signed autographs. Once she had a little dog with her. I didn't expect someone as famous as Norah Jones to actually come out and meet fans after her show, but she did. My mom is friends with Johnny Knoxville's cousin. She met him once and had no idea who he was. She said he was nice and funny as all hell. She didn't realize until years later she'd even met him until I showed her one of his movies. From what I gather, he's a normal dude and pretty hilarious. Join our community Discord, link in description. My grandmother and mum were really good friends with George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley from Wham. They got invited to concerts and got to sit in special seats, etc. And a few years ago me and my family stayed with Andrew Ridgeley in his guest house in Cornwall for a weekend. But they seemed to me like they stayed really nice to my grandparents and mum. And Andrew Ridgeley was very kind to my family when we met him. I miss George so much. I wish he would have been the one to do the reunion tour with Queen. His version of Somebody to Love is spot on. Family friend of mine actually dated Kurt Cobain before Ms. Love. Apparently they broke up because he wouldn't get a job. Then a little while later he got famous. Can't finish the question for obvious reasons. I remember that story. He wrote about a girl for her to stop being mad on his unemployment. Kurt Cobain wrote this for his girlfriend at the time, Tracy Miranda. They lived together for a while, and she took the photo that's on the album cover. Miranda didn't know the song was about her until she read about it years later in the book Come As You Are, the story of Nirvana. According to Chad Channing, who was Nirvana's drummer at the time, Cobain didn't have Agile for this song when he brought it to the studio. Chad told Song Facts, I remember we were rehearsing the song not long before we went in and recorded the record, Bleach. Kurt was just playing the song and we were working it out. I asked Kurt what the song was, and Kurt was like, well, I don't really know. And then I said, well, what's it about? And he says, it's about a girl. And I said, well, why don't you just call it about a girl? And he just kind of looked at me and smiled and said, okay, we went with that. I knew Tom Holland at the time he did that Tsunami movie. We were not really friends, but he was so funny and friendly. IDK what it is about Tom Holland, but I swear there's something about him that just triggers every mothering instinct in my entire being every time I see him on TV, YouTube, or in movies. There's this drive to wanting to put a sweater on him, cook and feed him food, wipe his face with a tissue and tell him to get good grades, stay away from fast girls or boys, or don't do drugs, make him go to mass, and offer him some quarters for the arcade. My own children should be jealous because this absolute stranger is my favorite child. Thank you all for the upvotes and shiny things. I did not expect this amount of positive feedback, and it's nice to know others find him just as precious, adorable, and wholesome too. Tagged you as Aunt May. Friend of mine was friends with Tom Hanks in high school and went to prom with him. He still writes her personalized B-Day cards on one of his typewriters. My mom dated Will Ferrell for a little while. He came round quite a lot and she said he was real down to earth and incredibly funny. However, afterwards they really just lost touch, so we never got to know how he personally changed. My mom says she's still like he used to be. My mom and dad still laugh about her dating him. Your mom dated the Gator? Gators BHS better be using those jimmies. I knew Brett and Jermaine, Flight of the Conchords, back in the late 90s early 2000s, and met Taika Waititi a few times too. I was a big fan of his art at the time. There was one painting of someone in a bathtub that stuck in my head. I knew Brett better than the others, because he was in a reggae band with my good friend Barnaby. As far as I can tell, they are all exactly the same. I'm not jealous of anyone in this thread but you. Flight of the Conchords was the yucking greatest. Did Steve tell you that? Perchance, Steve. I went to high school with Emma Chamberlain. She was a huge bully in high school and pretty much a brat who thought she could get away with whatever she wanted before she got famous. Her parents were divorced, which led to them both always trying to be her friend and never actually parenting her, so they basically let her do whatever she wanted. When she said that people from her high school made fun of her because she was poor and that the parking lot was all BMWs and Range Rovers, I lost my mind because she was the bully in high school. And while the school definitely had some wealthy students, it was mostly a middle class crowd. Didn't she grow up in the SF Bay Area, particularly the peninsula? BC is a native of the area. Unless you're in a specific area, you're not poor, and it just always rubbed me the wrong way. Yep, San Mateo County. I've seen families crammed into 1 or 2 bedroom apartments here that are definitely in an area too expensive for them to handle. So I wouldn't say only people living in certain neighborhoods are poor, but it depends on how you look at it. She definitely was not poor, had a comfortable life and her own car, and besides, no one really cared about money at my high school besides maybe being jealous of the few people that had a ridiculous amount of it. The idea of people from tight-knit high school making fun of someone because they didn't have enough money is just laughable, lol. I went to high school with Daka Montgomery. He was a D with a huge ego in high school, and I saw him recently when he came back to his hometown, and seems like he's still a D with an even bigger ego now. I can't watch Stranger Things without rolling my eyes every time he comes on screen. Well, he was a D in Stranger Things too, so he must be committed to his role, I guess. Wiki states he has his own podcast where he reads his own poetry. My brother knows the guy that Squidward was based off of. Turns out that made him more bitter cause he was made fun of. The floor creaks. The summers are brutal and there's a giant man eating clam in the backyard. The floor creaks. The roof leaks. There's a terrible draft. Please don't interrupt me. I'm not finished. The winters are harsh. The summers are brutal. There's a wild man eating clam in the backyard. Now would you care to see the rest of my home? Credit to you /Chocotaco 3030. Who knows if these are real, but they make for great reading while on the toilet. Morning shit crew checking in. Chris Hemsworth and his brother Liam. Both really good blokes before and after they became famous. My aunt dated both Hemsworth brothers in high school. She still jokes that she kissed Thor. Edit. She only dated Chris, but she knew the whole family. My best friend is cousins with Tyler Posey. She said he was a sweetheart before his Teen Wolf days and he still is now. That makes me so happy. When I was younger I was obsessed with that show, and it's nice to know he's genuinely a great guy. My brother used to play basketball with a bunch of people in high school. Among those who would sometimes join in was Pete Davidson. My brother said he got ripped on a ton and no one really liked him. But that might just be because he wasn't great at basketball. I met him last year while he was out with his friends. I didn't want to say anything till my mom rolled down the window and asked if I could get a picture. We were in the parking lot. He was on FaceTime with someone and he told them that he would call back later and he took a picture with me. Really nice guy. I feel really bad for that dude. It seems like he's constantly getting shit on. My aunt had dinner with Keanu Reeves and other people before he did Matrix when he came to Spain. She said that Keanu was very handsome and incredibly polite. Edit. I know that Keanu was famous before Matrix, but my aunt met him before he filmed Matrix. Also THX for the upvotes. He radiates this even from the distance. What a wholesome man. A co-worker of mine met Daisy Ridley while on a backpacking trip. Got to know each other pretty well while traveling together. She told my co-worker that she wanted to become an actress. Looks like that panned out pretty well. They said Daisy was an absolutely lovely individual. I knew Cillian Murphy back in secondary school. We didn't go to the same school but mingled a lot. He was a few years older than me. Dude was super quiet, but really damn friendly. I remember when he was cast in 28 Days Later and people were pretty hyped for him. But a good few people didn't think much of it. Once it came out though, a lot of people changed their tune when they could see him actually act amazingly. His roles in Sunshine, Peaky Blinders, 28 Days Later, and the Dark Knight trilogy absolutely blew me away. Edit. I just woke up and wow, I was not expecting this to blow up. Honestly, any role he takes he exceeds expectations. I'll have to check out the other movies he has played a role in. I changed The Dark Knight to the trilogy because his role as Scarecrow was phenomenal in all 3 movies, even though his roles were minor in the last 2 movies. My mum knew Mel B from her high school. Apparently she always copied other people's work. Well, she had to, otherwise she'd be Mel D. Edit. Left what I thought was a throwaway joke comment and came back to all this love. Thanks guys. Red heart. I knew Robert Pattinson about 15 years ago. Nice guy. Friendly. A lot of fun to be with. He lived by himself in the center of Soho, London, in a tiny 1-bed flat that I think he felt like the romantic vision of a starving artist, or at least wanted to. He had a weird side. He'd say random, violent, depraved things. He was obsessed with Jack Nicholson. He never really gave a fuck. He had confidence and he was always himself. And he knew he could be deliberately contradictory and he used that as a personality trope. But he was a good guy, and I get the impression he is very comfortable with himself now that he has developed his career, that he acts very well, and that he can pick and choose his roles based upon what he wants to do and who he wants to work with. But Twilight for him was always a means to an end. And I think he worked it very much to his benefit, and didn't compromise himself. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.